Long before the great alien empires ruled the stars, there were always rumors of a strange and dangerous species known only as humans. No one really knew if they had ever existed. Some said they were just old campfire stories told by soldiers to scare young recruits. Others believed humans were a kind of legend, like ghosts, beings who came from a small blue world at the edge of the galaxy and once fought wars that shook entire civilizations. Generals laughed whenever the name was mentioned. To them, humans were no more real than fairy tales. They would say things like, if humans were real, they would have conquered the galaxy by now. But where are they? Where are their worlds, their fleets, their armies? Historians would shake their heads and insist the stories were nothing more than fragments of ancient myths. And so, over centuries, the legend of humanity became something between a joke and a warning. But the strange thing about myths is that they do not die easily. Across many worlds, in forgotten archives and old libraries, records remained, broken records, half-burned texts, data fragments corrupted by time. They spoke of creatures who looked fragile, who came from a world of storms and oceans, yet somehow fought with unmatched determination. Some archives claimed humans were small and weak compared to most galactic species, but their strength came not from their size, it came from their will. When faced with defeat, they did not surrender. When cornered, they became more dangerous. And when they lost everything, they started again from nothing. There were even darker stories told in secret. They said humans could adapt to any environment, no matter how hostile. Poisonous atmospheres, crushing gravity, freezing planets, none of it mattered. If they wanted to live there, they found a way. If they wanted to fight there, they turned the environment itself into their weapon. Entire armies supposedly vanished into jungles, deserts, and ice fields where humans were waiting. To the enemy, it felt less like a war and more like being hunted. Yet, in all the thousands of years that followed, no one saw them again. The great alien empires grew larger, absorbing worlds and enslaving species, but not a single confirmed human was ever found. The stars were mapped, the planets catalogued, but there was no Earth, no human colonies, nothing. Eventually, the galaxy decided that the humans must have been wiped out long ago, or maybe they had never existed at all. The myth faded into whispers, and those who believed were ridiculed. Still, deep down, the story stayed alive. Children would dare each other by saying, "What if the humans come back?" Military recruits would hear old veterans mutter, "Pray you never meet a human in battle." And in the darkest corners of space, smugglers and outlaws told each other that humans were not dead. They were only waiting. It was a terrifying thought, because if the humans were waiting, then they must also be preparing. Some alien philosophers wondered why the myth was so persistent. Why would so many different species, spread across so many star systems, carry stories about the same mysterious enemy? How could hundreds of separate cultures, with no contact between them, all remember humanity in their own way? The details changed from world to world, but the essence remained the same. Humans were fighters, survivors, and builders of great machines of war. Others argued that the galaxy needed the myth. The empire was too powerful, too unshakable. To dream of a hidden species strong enough to defy it gave smaller civilizations a kind of hope, even if they didn't truly believe. After all, it was easier to imagine salvation in a legend than in reality. But there were those who feared the myth too. Some council leaders quietly kept their fleets armed against the possibility that humans might return. They told their people nothing, but in their secret halls they worried. If a species like that survived, what would they want? Would they come as friends? Or as conquerors? And so, the galaxy continued to turn. Empires rose and fell. Stars were colonized and abandoned. Wars were fought and forgotten. But in the background, the whisper of humanity never completely disappeared. Every once in a while, a strange event would occur. An unknown ship sighted at the edge of known space, a fleet vanishing without trace, a battle scar found on an abandoned world that no weapon in the galaxy could explain. These mysteries always led back to the same old question. Were the humans real? Most people scoffed and went on with their lives. Myths didn't win battles, they said. Legends didn't conquer planets. If humans were real, they were gone. If they were ever strong, their time had passed. But the old stories warned otherwise. They said humans had a habit of vanishing when it suited them, only to return stronger than before. And somewhere, hidden deep in the dark void where no empire dared to travel, something was stirring. Fleets that should not exist were being built in silence. Weapons never seen before were being prepared. And those who remembered the myths would have shivered if they had known the truth. The humans had never been destroyed. They had simply been watching. They were patient. They were waiting. And when the time was right, when the galaxy was least prepared, the myth would step out of the shadows and become reality once more. The Empire had existed for so long that most species in the galaxy could not remember a time before it. It was vast, stretching across thousands of star systems, swallowing planets one after another like a beast that could never be full. For generations, it had grown without challenge. To live under the Empire was to live under absolute control. To resist was to vanish. The rulers of the Empire believed themselves invincible. Their fleets were unmatched in number, their armies endless, their technology far beyond most of the smaller civilizations they conquered. Every planet they absorbed became part of their machine, its people turned into workers, soldiers, or slaves. Cultures that had once been proud and independent slowly disappeared, their histories erased or rewritten until they were nothing more than footnotes in the Empire's records. And yet, the Empire was not cruel simply for the sake of cruelty. To them, domination was natural. Order was more important than freedom. If a species refused to bend, it was considered a threat. And threats could not be tolerated. That was the way of the Empire. Absolute obedience or absolute destruction. For most species, there was no choice. When the Empire's fleets appeared in the sky, cities burned in hours. The power difference was too great. Even the bravest defenders soon realized resistance only brought suffering. Some tried to fight anyway, hoping to at least die with honor. Others surrendered quickly, believing survival was worth more than pride. Either way, the result was always the same. The Empire grew stronger, and another star system was added to its banner. The Empire's admirals grew arrogant. They believed no power could stand against them. They measured their strength not by who they could defeat, because they could defeat anyone, but by how quickly their enemies fell. They counted victories not in battles but in hours. A single Empire fleet could crush an entire planetary defense force in a day. To them, war was no longer dangerous. It was routine. Because of this arrogance, the stories of humans were laughed at even more. Whenever someone dared to bring up the ancient legends of the mythical warriors, the Empire's leaders dismissed it as a fantasy. They would say, if humans were real, they would already be under our rule. Nothing escapes us. And the generals would laugh, shaking their heads at the foolishness of old stories. Still, cracks existed in the Empire's pride. Conquering so many species meant enemies lingered in the shadows. Resistance movements formed on occupied worlds. Rebellions flared up. Smugglers supplied weapons in secret. Yet none of these truly threatened the Empire. They were sparks, and the Empire was a storm. Every uprising ended the same way. With fleets descending, cities bombed from orbit, and survivors dragged into chains. For ordinary people in the galaxy, life under the Empire was all they knew. Children grew up never imagining freedom. Entire species forgot their own histories, taught instead that the Empire had always been their protector, their master. Fear was constant, but so was routine. You obeyed the laws, paid your tribute, and stayed silent, and the Empire left you alive. But in private whispers, many dreamed of something different. Some longed for a savior, someone strong enough to fight back against the endless tide of conquest. That was when the old stories returned, the myths of humans who supposedly once fought empires and won. Most dismissed these whispers as foolish hope. Yet, in the darkest corners, people clung to the thought. If such beings had existed once, maybe they could exist again. Maybe not all hope was lost. The Empire itself never entertained such fears. Its leaders were too confident, too sure of their eternal rule. They believed they had already defeated every possible rival. To them, the galaxy was finished, conquered, and controlled. Expansion had become nothing more than routine paperwork, a process of sending fleets to new stars, subjugating the locals, and moving on. But this endless hunger for new territory carried a hidden danger. The Empire was stretching itself farther and farther across the stars, reaching into regions of space no one had touched before. Their explorers pushed into the unknown, searching for new worlds to claim, new resources to exploit. And in doing so, they drew closer to places better left undisturbed. There were warnings, strange signals picked up on the edges of known space, scout ships that vanished without explanation, reports of battle scars on empty planets, marks of weapons no Empire fleet had ever used. These mysteries were quietly ignored. The Empire did not like mysteries, and so it pretended they did not exist. For the ruling council, expansion mattered more than caution. They believed the galaxy belonged to them, and no forgotten corner could possibly hide a threat. Their scouts were ordered to continue, their fleets to advance without hesitation. Whatever lay ahead, they would crush it as they had crushed everything else. And so the Empire continued to spread, blind to the truth. In their arrogance, they did not realize they were stepping closer and closer to the shadow of the very myth they had mocked for centuries. The whispers of humanity were about to rise again, not as stories told in fear, but as fire and steel. Because while the Empire believed no rival existed, something in the dark was watching. Something old, something patient, and unlike the empires that rose and fell across history, this hidden power had not been weakened by time. It had been sharpening its claws, preparing for the moment when the galaxy's great conquerors grew too arrogant to see danger right in front of them. The Empire thought it was unchallenged. But soon, it would learn the truth. Humanity was never gone. Humanity was waiting. And when their warships came out of the void, the Empire's long expansion would finally meet the one thing it could not crush. At first, the signs were so small that no one paid attention. The Empire's scout fleets often traveled into unexplored space, mapping new systems and checking for resources. Usually, these missions were boring, predictable, and uneventful. A scout ship would jump into a system, scan it, record the data, and then return home. But in one particular sector, strange things began to happen. The first report came from a scout ship that detected unusual signals on the edge of deep space. The signals did not match any known communication codes, nor did they follow the patterns of natural cosmic noise. They were sharp, deliberate, and encrypted. At first, the crew assumed it was just a malfunction, maybe interference from a pulsar or a broken sensor. But the signals kept repeating, as if someone or something was sending a message. When the report reached the Empire's command, it was dismissed. The officials said it was static, nothing important. The Empire did not waste its time worrying about strange noises in the dark. So the scout ship was told to continue, to ignore the signals and move forward. But then that same scout ship vanished. There was no distress call, no last message, no warning at all. One moment the ship was sending routine updates, and the next moment it was gone. The Empire sent another ship to investigate. All it found were fragments, shards of metal drifting in the void, burned and twisted beyond recognition. The discovery caused whispers among the lower ranks. The damage did not look like anything they had seen before. The hull fragments were scarred by weapons that didn't match any alien empire known in the galaxy. Some claimed the edges were too clean, too precise, as though the ship had been cut apart by a blade of light. Others said the wreckage had signs of kinetic impact, as if struck by solid projectiles moving at impossible speed. An ancient style of weapon, long abandoned by the galaxy's fleets. The officers who found the wreckage argued about what it meant. Some thought it was proof of pirates with new technology. Others believed it was just an accident, maybe an experimental weapon test gone wrong. But in the shadows of the Empire's ranks, a few began to whisper a dangerous thought. What if the old myths were true? Still, the High Command refused to take the matter seriously. To them, the Empire was unchallenged. A single lost scout ship meant nothing in the grand scale of their power. They ordered the investigation closed. The report was buried, marked as classified, and anyone who spoke too much about it was silenced. But the strange events did not stop. Other scout ships reported unusual encounters. Some claimed to have seen flashes in the distance, massive ships that appeared on their sensors for a few seconds before vanishing. Others described energy signatures they couldn't identify, powerful enough to shake their systems. And again, ships began to disappear. The disappearances were never publicized. The Empire controlled information tightly, and ordinary citizens never heard the truth. They were told that the scouts had suffered malfunctions, that space was dangerous, and that such losses were normal. But among the crews, fear began to spread. They whispered about ghost ships in the dark, invisible hunters who struck without warning. Some even dared to say the name humans, though they spoke it only in secret, never aloud. Then came the first true encounter. A small Imperial patrol, consisting of 3 warships, entered the sector to investigate. They were armed, confident, and sure that nothing could threaten them. For hours they found nothing, just empty space and cold stars. But then their sensors went blind. All readings vanished. In the silence, shadows appeared around them. The warships tried to raise their shields, but it was too late. From the darkness, weapons fired bright, precise, devastating. The first ship was destroyed in an instant, torn apart before it could even fire back. The second tried to retreat, but something cut its engines with surgical accuracy, leaving it adrift and helpless. The third ship managed to send a partial distress call before being hit so hard it exploded into fragments. The distress call reached the Empire, but it was scrambled, broken by interference. Only a few words could be understood. Unknown weapons, massive ships, and one chilling word repeated again and again: humans. The Empire tried to silence the message, but it was too late. The recording spread among soldiers and workers, carried secretly from one ship to another. For the first time in centuries, fear grew inside the Empire's own ranks. The old stories were returning, not as legends but as warnings. To the galaxy's smaller civilizations, the rumors felt like sparks of hope. If the humans were real, maybe they could resist the Empire. Maybe someone had the strength to stand against the unstoppable. But hope came with fear as well, for no one knew what humanity wanted. If they had hidden for so long, why reveal themselves now? The Empire responded as it always did, with arrogance. It declared the missing ships an accident, the reports of strange fleets a lie spread by rebels. But deep down, even the admirals began to worry. Because the Empire had studied history, they knew the stories better than anyone. And the stories all said the same thing: when humanity returned, they would come with fire. Somewhere out in the endless dark, warships of a design never seen before were moving. Silent, patient, waiting. And each time the Empire reached farther into that forbidden sector, those shadows grew closer. The forgotten were no longer forgotten. They were watching. They were testing. And soon they would strike. For a long time, the Empire had managed to hide the strange reports. Ships disappearing, wreckage found with unknown damage, broken transmissions that spoke of humans. All of it was buried. The ruling council believed that if they ignored the whispers long enough, they would simply fade away. But the galaxy was beginning to change, and ignoring the truth would not stop what was coming. The first true sighting happened far out on the Empire's frontier, in a lonely star system that most considered unimportant. A mining fleet was working near an asteroid belt when their long-range sensors detected movement. At first, they assumed it was just debris or asteroids colliding. But then, enormous shapes began to appear. They slid out of the darkness, silent, with no identification codes, no signals, no warning. The miners froze as their systems struggled to measure the ships. They were massive, larger than anything the Empire had built, yet their shapes were strange. They weren't curved or elegant like Imperial ships. Instead, they were sharp, angular, built for war and nothing else. Black hulls that swallowed the starlight, no banners, no markings. Just shadows moving with terrifying precision. Before the miners could even send a full message, the shadows disappeared. The fleet had come and gone in seconds, leaving behind only silence. But the miners knew what they had seen, and the report they managed to transmit before vanishing spread quietly through the Empire's networks. A shadow fleet was out there, and it was watching. Soon, the sightings increased. Patrol ships reported being followed by unknown vessels that never showed up on sensors until it was too late. Entire convoys vanished without explanation. Survivors, when they were found, spoke in trembling voices of ships that seemed to appear out of nowhere, fire once, and then disappear before anyone could respond. It was like fighting ghosts. The Empire tried to downplay it, calling the events pirate attacks or malfunctions. But too many incidents piled up. Too many fleets went missing. And then came the first undeniable battle. An Imperial task force of 10 warships was sent into the sector to investigate. These ships were powerful, armed with the best weapons the Empire could build. Their commanders were confident, mocking the idea that anything could challenge them. They believed the mission would be routine. Find the attackers, destroy them, return home. But what they found was nothing like what they expected. As they entered the sector, their sensors suddenly lit up with readings they had never seen before. Energy spikes so strong they overloaded the systems. And then, out of the void, the Shadow Fleet appeared. Dozens of massive warships, sliding into formation as though they had been waiting for this exact moment. The Empire's admiral barked orders, and the Imperial fleet opened fire. Blinding beams and plasma cannons streaked across space, but the shadow ships did not scatter. Instead, their black hulls absorbed the punishment, their shields glowing with strange light. Then they answered. The first volley from the Shadow Fleet tore through the Imperial lines. Their weapons were terrifying, kinetic rounds that moved faster than light, railguns so powerful they shredded shields as if they weren't even there. Some fired beams of pure energy that cut through ships like paper. In moments, 3 Imperial warships were gone, broken apart in explosions that lit up the stars. The Admiral panicked, ordering a retreat, but the shadows didn't allow it. They moved with ruthless precision, targeting engines, cutting ships down one by one. Every strike was deliberate, efficient. These were not pirates. These were professionals. These were soldiers. The battle lasted less than 20 minutes. Out of 10 warships, only 1 survived, limping away with half its systems destroyed. The crew managed to send out a desperate report before falling silent. Their message was short, but it was enough to terrify anyone who heard it. They said the attackers identified themselves as humans. When the news reached the Empire's council, chaos followed. Some refused to believe it, insisting it was a trick by rebels. Others demanded the immediate mobilization of more fleets. But deep down, in the cold silence between their arguments, every one of them felt the same thing, fear. The Shadow Fleet had revealed itself, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had seen in centuries. They were not seeking attention. They were not claiming territory. They struck like hunters, appearing only when they wished, destroying fleets, and disappearing into the void again. Their power was undeniable, but so was their patience. They did not fight to conquer yet. They fought to remind the galaxy that they were here. And for those who had grown up hearing the old legends, there was no more doubt. The myths had been real all along. Humanity had survived. Humanity had hidden, watching as the Empire grew fat and arrogant. And now they had returned with ships more powerful, more dangerous than anything in the galaxy. The smaller civilizations whispered in secret, daring to hope. If the humans were strong enough to destroy Imperial fleets, maybe the Empire could finally be defeated. But others trembled at the thought. The humans of legend were not saviors, they were conquerors. If they had come back, who could say what they wanted? Out in the darkness, the Shadow Fleet continued its silent war. They struck only when they chose, testing the Empire, studying its defenses, cutting away its strength piece by piece. No one knew how many ships they had, or where they were hiding. Some believed there were only a few. Others feared there were thousands, waiting to emerge all at once. The Empire had always believed it was untouchable, that no enemy could ever shake its rule. But now, for the first time in living memory, the mighty Empire was bleeding. And the ones responsible were the very beings it had laughed at for centuries. The humans had returned, and their war had only just begun. For a long time, the Empire tried to hide the truth. It told its people that the strange attacks were only rebels with stolen technology. It said the missing fleets had been destroyed by natural disasters, black holes, or cosmic storms. But lies can only last so long. The Shadow Fleet was striking too often, too precisely. Survivors from broken battles whispered the same word, over and over again. Humans. At first, the word spread in secret. Soldiers who returned from patrols spoke of dark ships that moved like predators. Pilots described weapons they had never seen before. Some swore they had heard voices during the battles, voices broadcast across comms, speaking in a language that had been dead for centuries. They had introduced themselves with a chilling certainty. We are human. The Empire tried to silence these reports, but fear spreads faster than commands. Soon, across the galaxy, everyone had heard the rumors. The myths were no longer just myths. The humans of old stories, the species said to be long gone, were back. The reaction was different depending on who you asked. For the rulers of the Empire, the news was a nightmare. Humans had always been described as clever, ruthless, and impossible to break. The very idea that they had survived all this time and returned with a fleet stronger than anything in the galaxy filled the council with dread. If the legends were true, the Empire might not be able to stop them. For the oppressed species living under imperial rule, however, the whispers felt like sparks of hope. In the markets of conquered worlds, in the shadows of slave camps, in the quiet corners where rebellion still lived, people repeated the name human like a prayer. If they were real, maybe they could fight back against the Empire. Maybe they could bring freedom. But hope always comes with fear. What if the humans were not saviors? What if they were worse than the Empire? The old stories were clear. Humans were not gentle. They were survivors who would burn worlds if it meant winning. They were not known for mercy, but for resilience and fury. No one could be sure if their return meant liberation or another form of conquest. The Empire, desperate to learn the truth, sent spies and covert missions into the regions where the Shadow Fleet had been sighted. Most of these missions never returned. Those that did brought back terrifying fragments of information. They reported enormous shipyards hidden in the darkness, building warships faster than anything the Empire could manage. They spoke of strange colonies, heavily defended, with no sign of weakness. And everywhere they went, they saw the same symbol. A blue and white flag, marked with the shape of a world. It was Earth, the homeworld of humanity, planet thought to be lost forever. The Empire realized too late that the humans had not died out. They had simply disappeared, hiding their strength where no one could find them. For centuries, they had prepared in silence, building fleets in secret, waiting for the right moment to return. The revelation shook the galaxy. What species could vanish for so long, only to reappear with such power? How had they survived in the dark while the empires of the galaxy rose and fell? And why had they chosen this moment to return? The first direct message from humanity answered that question. It was broadcast openly, across dozens of systems impossible to block. The voice was calm, steady, but filled with iron. It said, "We are the descendants of Earth. You thought us extinct. You called us myths. But we were never gone. We were watching. We were waiting. And now we have returned." The message continued, warning the Empire that humanity would no longer allow its endless conquests. It did not promise peace. It did not promise war. It simply declared that humanity was here, real and unbroken. And then it ended with a single sentence that chilled the galaxy. Remember the stories. They were not enough. The impact was immediate. Panic spread through the Empire's fleets. Soldiers who had once laughed at the legends now feared every shadow, every blip on their sensors. Civilizations that had bowed to the Empire for generations began to dream of rebellion, hoping the humans might strike in their favor. And deep inside the council's chambers, the rulers argued bitterly, torn between attacking the humans with everything they had or trying to negotiate with a species they did not understand. But the humans gave no clear answer. They did not declare open war, but they did not retreat. Their fleets continued to appear without warning, striking with precision and vanishing again. Their presence alone was enough to shatter the Empire's image of invincibility. For the first time in centuries, the Empire looked weak. Whispers filled the galaxy. Some said the humans had built weapons powerful enough to destroy stars. Others claimed they had allies, other hidden species that the Empire had overlooked. A few even believed the humans had discovered secrets of time and space, giving them abilities no one else could imagine. Nobody knew which rumors were true, but one thing was certain. Humanity had revealed itself, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The Empire had thought humans were just a story, a warning told by old soldiers. But now those stories had come to life, walking once more among the stars with fire at their command. And the galaxy, for all its strength, could only watch and wait, wondering what humanity would do next. The moment humanity revealed itself, the galaxy was never the same again. For centuries, the Empire had been the only true power. Its fleets moved wherever they wished, its armies crushed anyone who resisted, and its citizens believed it was unshakable. But now, whispers of humans spread like fire through dry grass. Everywhere, people repeated the same question. If the legends were true, what would humanity do next? In the lower ranks of the Empire's military, fear spread faster than orders. Soldiers who had once laughed at the old stories now remembered them in detail. They spoke of humans who never surrendered, who fought even when they were outnumbered, who adapted to every weapon thrown against them. Some swore that humans could survive in places no other species could live. Others claimed that humans had a gift for turning defeat into victory. These stories, once dismissed as bedtime tales, now kept entire fleets awake at night. Whenever an unknown signal appeared on scanners, commanders panicked. Was it just space debris? Or was it the humans? When a patrol ship failed to report in, officers whispered that the Shadow Fleet had claimed another victim. Even the bravest captains began to doubt their own power. The Empire had taught them that nothing could stand against Imperial warships. But now they had seen fleets destroyed in minutes. If humans could do that, what else were they capable of? For the common people living under the Empire's rule, the return of humanity felt like both a blessing and a curse. On conquered worlds, slaves and laborers spoke in secret of the humans as liberators. They imagined massive fleets coming to break their chains, to tear the Empire apart, and to give them freedom again. For the first time in generations, they felt hope. But hope was mixed with dread. The legends did not describe humans as gentle saviors. They described them as ruthless survivors, willing to destroy entire armies and burn entire planets if it meant victory. No one could be sure if the humans would bring liberation or another kind of rule. The smaller civilizations, those not yet conquered, trembled in fear. Some wanted to send envoys to the humans immediately, begging for protection. Others argued that it was safer to keep their distance, to avoid drawing the attention of a species powerful enough to crush the Empire's fleets. Council after council met in secret chambers, debating endlessly what to do. In every hall, the same question echoed. Should they see the humans as allies, or as the next great threat? Even among the Empire's rulers, fear gnawed at their pride. The council that had once mocked the idea of humans now sat in silence as reports came in. Entire fleets gone, patrols ambushed, colonies isolated. The Shadow Fleet seemed to strike wherever it wanted, and the Empire could not stop it. Worst of all, they realized something terrifying. The humans were not even fighting at full strength. These attacks were only tests, skirmishes. The humans were showing what they could do, but they had not yet unleashed their full power. That thought alone was enough to shake the Empire's confidence. If this was only the beginning, what would happen when the humans decided to launch a true war? Fear also reached beyond the Empire. In neutral territories, merchants and traders carried rumors faster than any official broadcast. They told stories of human warships black as night, bristling with weapons never seen before. They said the ships moved like predators, striking and vanishing before anyone could respond. Some claimed to have seen entire armadas hidden inside nebulas, waiting to descend upon the galaxy. Each story was different, but all of them ended the same way, with the certainty that humanity had returned, and they were powerful beyond imagination. The strangest thing was that no one knew what the humans wanted. They had revealed themselves, they had destroyed fleets, but they had not declared war or demanded territory. They did not send ambassadors or attempt to negotiate. They simply appeared, struck with terrifying force, and then disappeared again. It was this silence that frightened people the most. If humans had made demands, at least the galaxy would know their goals. But their silence meant one thing: they were planning something, and no one could predict what it was. As days turned into weeks, the galaxy felt heavier, as though everyone was holding their breath. Fleets stayed closer to home, afraid to wander too far into the dark. Trade routes shifted as merchants avoided sectors where humans were rumored to appear. On imperial worlds, people whispered behind closed doors, afraid to speak too loudly in case someone accused them of treason. Fear had wrapped itself around every planet, every space station, every ship. And then came the rebellions. On several conquered worlds, small uprisings broke out. Rebels who had once been too afraid to fight now carried weapons openly, shouting that the humans had returned and the Empire's days were numbered. Most of these rebellions were crushed quickly, but the message was clear: the Empire's grip was slipping. The fear of humans had given courage to the weak, and that was more dangerous than any weapon. In the great halls of power, the Empire's leaders argued bitterly. Some wanted to throw everything at the humans, to send massive fleets into the dark and crush them before they grew stronger. Others warned that this would only lead to disaster, that the humans were baiting them into a trap. A few whispered of peace, of negotiation, but they were silenced quickly. The Empire had never begged before, and it would not beg now. At least not yet. But outside their chambers, the galaxy already knew the truth. The Empire was afraid. Its admirals were afraid. Its soldiers were afraid. And the people under its rule no longer believed it was invincible. The myth of human return had become reality, and that reality had shaken the galaxy to its core. The humans had not yet declared war, but they had already won something even greater. They had taken the galaxy's certainty, its belief in the Empire's eternal strength, and shattered it. Now every world, every fleet, every mind lived in the same question: when would the humans strike again? And deep in the silent void, the humans were waiting, watching as fear spread exactly as they intended. For them, fear was the first weapon, and it had already struck deeper than any blade. The galaxy had waited in silence, but silence never lasts forever. For weeks, the humans had struck from the shadows. Small raids, ambushes, and sudden appearances that vanished before the Empire could react. But now the whispers turned into reality. Humanity was done hiding. The first great battle had arrived. It began on the edge of Imperial space, near a mining colony that supplied rare metals for the Empire's fleet. The colony was heavily defended, with a garrison of warships stationed in orbit and a fortified outpost on the ground. The Empire believed it was untouchable. After all, no enemy had ever dared to challenge such a well-protected system. But that was before the humans returned. The first sign of trouble was a distortion on the colony's sensors. At first, commanders thought it was a system malfunction, just interference from a nearby nebula. But then the distortions multiplied. Dozens. Hundreds. The scanners could not identify them, only that something was moving fast, too fast. Panic spread across the control stations as alarms blared. Before the Empire could respond, the void of space rippled, and from the darkness human warships emerged. They were unlike anything the Empire had seen. Black, sharp, and silent, they looked less like ships and more like predators, built for the kill. Some were small and agile, darting like hunters across the battlefield. Others were massive, their hulls glowing faintly with strange energy that no Imperial scientist had ever studied. And then there were the dreadnoughts, titans of steel and fire, carrying weapons powerful enough to split planets apart. The Imperial admiral in charge shouted orders immediately. The Empire's warships surged forward, engines burning bright, weapons charging. They outnumbered the humans 2-1, their confidence returning for a moment. After all, numbers had always crushed resistance before, but the humans fought differently. When the first Imperial volleys screamed across space, the humans didn't meet them head-on. Instead, their ships twisted and danced, weaving through the fire like shadows. Beams of light missed their targets. Missiles exploded harmlessly in empty space, and within moments, the humans were already inside the Imperial formation. Then they fired back. The weapons of humanity roared with terrifying power. Cannons unleashed blasts that tore through shields as if they were paper. Missiles streaked with such speed that defense systems could not track them. Some ships fired beams of pure energy, slicing through Imperial cruisers like a blade through cloth. Within minutes, the Empire lost half a dozen ships. Explosions lit up the void like dying stars, and panic spread through the ranks. But the humans did not stop there. They moved with terrifying coordination, as if every ship was part of one living organism. When one vessel drew fire, another covered it. When an Imperial battleship tried to escape, 3 human frigates hunted it down. There was no chaos in their attack, only precision, discipline, and deadly intent. The colony below watched in horror and awe as the battle raged above. Civilians hid in bunkers while soldiers scrambled to prepare defenses. But many already knew it was pointless. The war was not being decided on the ground. It was being decided in orbit, where the humans were proving that the old stories were not just legends, they were truth. The Imperial Admiral tried to rally his forces. He ordered his largest battleship forward, a massive vessel that had once crushed an entire rebellion on its own. It fired everything it had: broadside cannons, missile salvos, heavy beams. The void itself seemed to shake under its fury. But the humans had come prepared. One of their dreadnoughts moved forward, its hull glowing brighter as strange energy surged across it. When the Imperial barrage struck, the ship absorbed the blows, its shields flaring like a storm but never breaking. And then it answered. A single shot erupted from its forward cannon, a blinding lance of energy that pierced straight through the Imperial battleship. For a moment there was silence. Then the battleship split apart, fire spilling from its core before it exploded in a flash that could be seen for light years. The sight broke the Empire's will. Their fleet, once proud and disciplined, collapsed into chaos. Some ships tried to fight, others fled, but none succeeded. The humans hunted them down with ruthless efficiency, leaving only wreckage drifting in the void. The battle that had begun with Imperial confidence ended in utter destruction. On the ground, the colony's governor sent desperate pleas for help. Messages raced across Imperial space, begging for reinforcements. But reinforcements were too far away. By the time the nearest fleet could respond, the battle was already over. Human ships descended toward the colony, weapons charged but silent. They did not fire on civilians. Instead, they sent a simple message: surrender or be destroyed. The governor had no choice. The colony lowered its defenses, its banners of the Empire pulled down. For the first time in generations, the Imperial crest was removed from a world. Not by negotiation but by force. Humanity had taken their first system, and they had done it in a single battle. News spread across the galaxy faster than light. Every world, every station, every ship heard the story. The humans had faced an Imperial fleet twice their size and crushed it. They had destroyed one of the Empire's greatest battleships with a single shot. They had taken an entire colony in hours. The Empire's invincibility was shattered, and fear became certainty. Humanity was not just real. Humanity was unstoppable. For those living under Imperial rule, hope burned brighter. If the humans could defeat the Empire here, perhaps they could do it everywhere. Rebellions began to whisper again, this time louder, stronger. But for the Empire's rulers, the truth was clear. The first great battle was only the beginning. In the silence after the battle, as wreckage floated like broken bones across the stars, one thought echoed through every mind in the galaxy. Humanity had returned. And they had come not to hide, not to talk, but to fight. The galaxy trembled because now it understood what the old myths had always said. When humans fight, they do not stop until the war is theirs. The destruction of the Imperial fleet at the mining colony was not just a battle, it was a spark. Across the galaxy, that spark turned into fire. The humans had returned, and now the war had truly begun. The Empire tried to hide the defeat at first. Officials claimed it was just a minor skirmish, a mistake, or a technical malfunction. But rumors spread faster than lies. Survivors carried the truth with them. Traders whispered about entire fleets being wiped out in minutes. Refugees from the mining colony told stories of black warships that fought like predators. The truth could not be buried. Humanity was real, and their power was terrifying. Soon, human fleets appeared in more places. They struck without warning, appearing in systems that had been secure for centuries. They attacked shipyards, convoys, supply depots, and communication hubs. Each attack was fast, precise, and devastating. Before the Empire could respond, the humans were already gone, leaving only wreckage and silence behind. For the Empire, it was like fighting shadows. They were used to enemies that screamed and begged, rebels that rose in anger but lacked discipline. But the humans fought with patience and skill. They did not waste energy. They hit hard, disappeared, and struck again where the Empire was weakest. Each time, the Empire lost ships, soldiers, and control. But the war was not only fought with weapons. For the first time in generations, whispers of rebellion spread through the Empire's worlds. On border planets, people looked to the stars with hope instead of fear. If the humans can defeat the Empire, they said, maybe we can be free too. Small uprisings began to appear. Soldiers deserted. Governors started questioning their loyalty. The Empire, once so mighty, was slowly beginning to crack from the inside. Meanwhile, the humans grew bolder. At first, they had attacked small targets. But soon, they began striking deeper into Imperial space. Entire fleets appeared out of nowhere, challenging the Empire directly. Their ships carried strange technologies the Empire could not understand. Shields that resisted the strongest beams, weapons that cut through armor like it was nothing, engines that moved faster than anyone thought possible. The myths had spoken of human cleverness, but no one expected this level of power. One of the greatest battles of the war happened above a fortress world near the Empire's core. This planet was considered untouchable, a symbol of strength. Dozens of Imperial warships guarded it, along with defense stations and orbital cannons. When the humans arrived, many believed they would finally be defeated. But the humans did not hesitate. Their fleet spread out like wings of fire. The battle lasted for days, with both sides unleashing everything they had. Imperial commanders threw wave after wave of ships at the humans, but it was like throwing stones into a storm. The humans moved with impossible precision. They lost ships, yes, but each one seemed to fight until its last breath, taking enemies with it. And when their dreadnoughts fired, the fortress world's defenses crumbled one by one. At the end of the battle, the planet surrendered. The Empire had not just lost another system, it had lost one of its proudest symbols. Across the galaxy, the news spread. The humans could even break the Empire's strongest chains. The rulers of the Empire were furious. They gathered their greatest minds, desperate to understand the humans' technology. Spies were sent, traps were laid, secret projects began. But even as they planned, fear gnawed at them. If humans had been able to hide for so long, what else were they hiding? If these warships were only the beginning, what would come next? For the humans, the war was not about conquest. It was about survival and justice. For too long, the Empire had ruled the galaxy with cruelty, crushing every world that resisted. Humanity had watched from the shadows, preparing, building, and waiting for the right moment. Now they had chosen their time. Each victory was not just a battle won, it was a message. We are real, we are strong, and we will not be slaves. As months turned into years, the war spread everywhere. Border worlds rose in rebellion, encouraged by human victories. Imperial fleets grew weaker, stretched too thin across too many battles. Some worlds joined the humans willingly, offering resources, soldiers, and support. Others simply stopped obeying the Empire. The galaxy was no longer under one power. It was breaking apart piece by piece, and the humans were at the center of it. But the war also had a cost. Human fleets suffered losses. Entire crews were lost in battles too fierce to survive. Cities on both sides burned. The galaxy itself trembled as worlds changed hands again and again. No one could stay neutral for long. Everyone had to choose. Stand with the Empire or stand with the humans. At last, it became clear that the Empire could not stop them. Even their most powerful weapons could not break human resolve. Even their greatest fleets were not enough. Humanity fought like no other species. They did not give up, they did not break, and they always found a way to strike back. The war that began with a single myth had now engulfed the galaxy. No corner was safe, no world untouched. The humans were no longer legends told in whispers. They were warriors, leaders, and liberators. Their ships filled the skies, their victories shook empires, and their name became a rallying cry for freedom. And so the galaxy changed forever. The empire that had once seemed eternal was now on the edge of collapse. The humans, once thought to be nothing more than stories, were rewriting history with fire and steel. The war was not over, it had only begun. But one truth had already been written across the stars. The age of myths was over. The age of humanity had arrived.